Welcome to the Together for Education in Ames podcast, where we have meaningful conversations on the state of our local school districts. Schools should be a place of hope for children, where they can come and learn without fear of being judged or labeled. We advocate for unity in our student population and excellence in education. I'm Kira Werstein, your host. Hosting with me today is Sadrac Aleman. I am a college teaching professor, mother of 3 children in the Ames School District.
Sadrac Aleman, a Spanish teacher.
And we are excited to announce at Together for Education in Ames, we are hosting a public forum with the Ames Community School District. We are so glad that the district has been reaching out across the community and engaging with different community groups. So we reached out to the interim superintendent, Vincent, to request a community event as well. Then I went and met with her. And I shared that we have some questions about some of the policies, practices, and curriculum that they are implementing in the district. And she said that they would be glad to meet and answer questions in a forum. So we invite you. It is a public forum. All are welcome. It will be next week, Tuesday, March 1st at 6 p.m. at the district administration office off of 24th Street in Ames. Before the forum, we just want to give a background context before attending in order to understand what is going on in the district and therefore understand the nature of our questions. We are also taking public questions that you can email us at togetherforeducation@gmail.com. So there is a culture war across, not just in Ames, but across really the entire country right now. It revolves around the topic of social justice, more specifically a concept called wokeism or anti-racism. There's a number of different synonyms for this topic. So if you're not familiar with what wokeism is, according to Wikipedia, and I use Wikipedia because it's a source of information available to and edited by millions of people. And so I speculate that for that reason, it would have less bias than many other sources. So according to Wikipedia, woke means to be alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. Beginning in the 2010s, the term woke began to encompass a broader awareness of social inequities such as sexism. And it's also been used as a name for these ideological ideas involving identity politics and social justice. For example, the notion of white privilege and slavery reparations for African Americans. Like I said, there's a number of synonyms for this concept. In the Ames School District, Dr. Anthony Jones, who's the director of equity, he calls this concept having a critically conscious lens that a person may view the world through. So, like wokeism, in a recent parent meeting that I viewed, Jones defined this concept of critical consciousness as, quote, the willingness and ability to see how power and privilege are at work to systematically advantage some, while simultaneously disadvantage others. Although everyone has bias, he says, the power associated with dominant group identities, along with institutional power possessed by those groups, enable the biases of some, not all individuals, some individuals to contribute to reproducing or maintaining systems that oppress minoritized groups and benefit the dominant groups. So, Sadrac, we've talked about this topic on previous episodes. Dr. Jones, he doesn't say explicitly in his quote because he's trying not to directly violate House File 802, the bill that prohibits him from doing so. So he uses replacement words to explain that the dominant groups, those are the white people, and the minoritized groups, those are people of color. And he says in these few sentences that dominant white people have power and privilege and are, quote, at work to systematically advantage the white people while simultaneously disadvantage the minoritized groups. So, Sadrac, what are your thoughts about the idea that people of color are permanently, just by virtue of their skin color, oppressed?
I think I'm going to disagree some on this. I feel like putting myself as an example, I became a professional. I am where I am, not because of my skin color, but because of the work I did to go to school, the work I did to keep myself, learning and trying to get away from a lot of things, the world can offer you. I mean, from my point of view, I don't think that is not a matter of the skin color. It is how effortlessly, you do things. Like if you don't want to be down, then you have to do something with your life. And it's not because of you're white or if you're brown or you're black. No, it is because you want to be somebody in life. And in order to do that, just like I did a lot of studying while I was working. And now I can enjoy the fruit of my labor that I did before.
Totally. That's awesome. And so when you were employed in the Ames School District, this concept was taught, and you actually, if I remember correctly, you had a conversation with Dr. Jones about this ideology, as I thought you referenced it as like one brown-skinned person with another. And so what did that conversation sound like when you disagreed with him?
I don't know, like, I felt like he didn't know what to respond back to me. Because I said it on my first episode, I thought that the district was really trying to go away from that, of one person of color being, oppressed, and that's what they did to me, another person of color. So as right there, that's a clear example. It is not because I'm white, I'm not white, or because she was white. No, it was two person of color doing that to each other. And I don't feel like I said, it is not the color, it is who you are and how you want to be treated and how you want to treat others. And again, it is an effort, but you have to do your work in order to be somebody in life.
Yeah. And if I understood what you're saying correctly, is that you were oppressed by the administrators in a way by when they didn't allow your views to be heard.
Correct, because they didn't agree with theirs. So right there, it's like, okay, we all are going to disagree. We all are going to have different points of view. But just because mine is different than yours, you're not going to see me on the hot chair to talk to me about things. And then if you do it, then who's decided why you're sitting me down? I mean, who's deciding those things?
Yeah, totally. So there are alternative perspectives to this ideology. Of course, we're sharing that we have an alternative view. Some of the leaders in this space nationally that have produced work that really break down this wokeist ideology. Dr. John McWhorter is one of them. He's a professor of linguistics at Columbia University. He's written a number of books on topics of race relationships, African American culture. His most recent book, entitled Woke Racism: How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America. He writes that wokeism is actually a religion and it hurts Black people. He says it's not like a religion, that wokeism is a religion. For example, quote, those who are willing and able to see how power and privilege are at work, it constitutes those who are elect, very much like in many religions, right? Mm-hmm. And furthermore, the elect have this concept of the original sin, that is, quote, white privilege. The whites are to then ritually acknowledge that they possess this white privilege with an awareness that they can never absolve it. So, Sadrac, in a previous episode, you mentioned that someone apologized to you for being white. And I'm wondering if John McWhorter's explanation of wokeism as a religion helps shed light on that conversation that you had with that person. So I'm curious, what was the context of that story, that when this person that was white apologized to you for being white?
Yeah. It was right after some kind of training that we have on CRT, and they share everything, the training and all that, and then at the end of the number of sessions of trainings, this person came to me and apologized.
So it was in the school.
Right.
Okay. And according to how John McWhorter breaks this down in his book, and what that person was doing is trying to absolve himself of his whiteness, because
Right.
it is deemed the original sin. So McWhorter goes on to explain exactly what we are seeing in our schools, that the woke elect seek to then inoculate our kids with their responsibility to acknowledge their privilege, and children of color, that they are in this permanent oppressed state from a very early age, as early as possible, kind of like Sunday schools with more traditional churches, except that they actually have penetrated our public school system, which again is why we're having this podcast.
Right.
And so what this was intended, our kind of overview, if you will, of wokeism as a religion, is that this is being taught to students and teachers in our community, in the Ames School District. And these topics do violate a law. It's a bill called House File 802, which prohibits topics, specific defined topics, teaching of stereotyping of people based on their demographic variables. So in our upcoming forum, we'll have the opportunity to ask Superintendent Vincent and the administrators about their teaching of these topics in the context of 802. And so some kind of final thoughts. John McWhorter actually dedicated his book, if you look at the very first page, to each person who finds within themselves to take a stand against this detour in human, intellectual, cultural, and moral development. So, Sadrac, you decided to do just that, to take a stand against this detour in our public schools. Why is it important to you to share your view on this topic?
Well, I feel like I don't want what it was done to me, to be done to other people. I know for a fact, that what it was done to me wasn't right. And, I just decided to stand up and speak. And like I told them before I left, I'm leaving because I want to speak and speak louder, because I'm not willing to sit down and be quiet and say nothing. So this matters to me because they did that to me. And I feel like I don't want this, to be done to any other teacher. Mm-hmm. Nor this religion, be taught to our kids in schools. Yeah. So that's why I'm standing up.
Yeah.
And I said, share with some people, I'm calling everybody to stand up and speak and say something. Something that I shared with you was, some people is saying just, you're white, so you cannot be, fighting against CRT, fighting against BLM. And I'm like, no, you can do it as well. You can do it. According to a lot of people, they already label you as racist. Mm-hmm. So they put the label on you already. So why not just stand up and say things, because according to them, if you sit, you're racist. And if you stand up and say something, you are as well. Uh-huh. So just get up and do something about it, just use your voice and do what is right.
Totally. Yeah, well said. And so with that, I just want to finish today just reflecting on this woke ideology. I personally don't think that folks who believe this ideology, I don't think it's coming from a place of malice. I know there's people that disagree with me on that, but I think it very well could be coming from a good place, but it's just a mistaken view. However, intent doesn't matter. What does matter is application and what's the product of an approach that divides people by race and labels them oppressor and oppressed. The result is that it pits them up against each other. And we've seen this locally. We've seen this nationally, that the fruit that comes from this ideology, the fruit that it bears, is division and destruction. When we pit children up against each other and teach them that they are adversaries, I contend that the roots of this ideology underpin the high levels of the violence that we've seen this year in both the Ames Middle School and the high school. So with that, it is our hope, it's our aim that we advocate for high quality education and that we come together in our schools. So we encourage you, we invite you to come to the public forum Tuesday, March 1st, 6 p.m. At the administrative building off 24th Street in Ames. Thank you so much for joining us today. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, join the conversation. We want to hear your thoughts because it's together that we build a thriving community in Ames and Central Iowa.